Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you guys kind of sticking with me as I still figure out how I want to set everything up here. But yeah, anyway, so today I'm going to run the KSR Eros into my Fortin Meshuggah. And it'll probably be a bit of a quicker one, guys. I kind of just want to touch on two different types of tones that I go for nowadays. A lot of people see the type of guitars that I play and stuff and assume that I'm just, a gent head, which I'm not. I mean, I'm not one of those people that are out to act like gent is this bad thing. It's really not. A lot of those bands are creating some really, really great music. Some of it is for sure getting samey at this point, but at the same time, a lot of it really is just great music. In particular, some of y'all probably know that Monuments is my favorite band and John Brown is my favorite guitarist. But that's something that happened over time. For me, a lot of this guitar stuff really started out with, I followed a very natural progression in that stuff like Iron Maiden, Metallica, and Megadeth, those were some of the first bands that I really appreciated. And even before, well, not before that, shortly after that, I got into the 80s shred stuff, and that playing just little pieces of that stuff and watching those guitarists lesson videos and learning those exercises, I think is part of how I started to really pick up the technique that I have nowadays. But anyway, what I think is kind of interesting about that is that the tones that I go for nowadays tend to be somewhere in between those two extremes. Like the super saturated death metal and just power metal stuff, and the more dry percussive gent stuff. I kind of go for something that's in the middle. That's what I prefer. And for me, that's a big part of why an overdrive is very important. And I'm going to kind of attempt to demonstrate some of that for you today. So the Meshuggah makes that kind of fairly easy to do, actually, because the master volume control on it has this pull gain feature here, where when it's pulled out you lose some volume but the sound becomes more saturated. When you push it in, you gain volume and the sound becomes less saturated. So we're going to kind of mess with that in conjunction with the Eros and just see what kind of cool stuff we can get. So we're going to go for something a little bit more saturated first. I'm playing around with it without the Eros. So this is the pull gain, the pull knob out. So we're getting more gain, a higher level of gain and saturation out of this amp. Super cool, but I can throw the Eros in and get even more out of it. I'd also use a tone like this for some of the drop D stuff that I used to play a lot. Yes, I went through an Avenged Sevenfold phase like most everybody does. They really do have some of the best riffs out there. But yeah, for a tone like that, that's the type of thing that I'd go for. all that sort of stuff. But anyway, nowadays I tend to gravitate towards the drier side of things. But like I said, I do kind of like to float in between the two. So now let's go ahead and push the push volume in, and it'll cut some of the saturation and it'll get louder. Really cool. So now that kind of really speaks to me. But even still, I like to add an overdrive to that to still kind of saturate it out and kind of meet somewhere in the middle of the two tones that we're talking about today. Yeah, like this does it for me. So typically if I'm trying to play like, you know, original stuff and writing my own riffs and stuff, this is about where I tend to like my tone. Yeah, and so far, the Eros is really doing it for me. It's helping me fall back in love with my Fortin Meshuggah, which may be a funny thing to say, but typically, and this is still me learning the amp, but I felt like there was a whole bunch of settings on here that just did not sound good to me, but it was like one or two that sounded amazing. Now I think that I'm just suddenly learning to dial in this amp better, but at the same time the Eros is definitely helping make that happen. But anyway, if you're enjoying the content I'm throwing up here and you're looking forward to some amp comparisons, pedal comparisons, all that sort of stuff, that's the main thing that I do. I appreciate if you guys like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Take care.